I'd like to welcome you all to this IOSH Financial Services, Professional and Financial Services Committee session this morning. Just like to introduce you to Christian Hopper, who is a member of the Professional Services and Financial Services Committee member. He's going to take us through this morning this very, very interesting and engaging talk. Feel free, please, to use the questions and answers what's it called, chat at the bottom of the screen, or it may be to the side or to the top of your screen, to ask any questions. If somebody asks a question and somebody else has got an answer or a comment, please also put that into the questions and answers. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Christian, and over to you, Christian.
Thanks ever so much, Simon. And it's great to be a part of the committee and get the chance to talk about this important topic. First question: Can you see the screen? Okay, is everything on track?
Yeah, I think we can. Yes, it's all good. Thank you.
Okay, so the title of today's sort of lunch and learn is Navigating Serious Injury and Fatality, SIF Prevention. Are you good or just lucky? So hopefully we will learn and refresh ourselves along the way and have some good discussion on how this topic impacts us within our sector. So myself, Christian Hopper, I've been in HSE management for about 23 years. I'm a certified member, and I spend most of my time advising clients on continual safety improvement solutions, currently with a company called DEKRA. But really, I'm an HSE training and development specialist, and this is a really interesting topic for me because I think it's one that has often not, in my view, been prominent enough within formal HSE education. So I'll be interested to hear people's views of how they felt this topic has been treated within their own learning process. But the question to the group really is, over the last 20 years, have we really improved safety? And I've got a bit of data to sort of continue the discussion. So you can see this from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a little out of date, but we've got some more recent data as well. But it shows the total recordable incident rates. And as you can see, looks like things are going in the right direction. It's almost certainly more than half decreased in the last 30 odd years. But when we take the fatality rate, it tells a very different story. And I hope you can see that really we're not that far ahead of where we were 30 or 40 years ago. You know, perhaps the 20-25% improvement. So yeah, you know, do people recognize this? Is this something that they talk about in their business? Ultimately, you know, these statistics are shocking because we've all worked so hard for the last 20 and 30 years in safety to make the changes needed to protect lives and reduce risks. And if we look about more recent data, you know, certainly in the UK, there was an increase in the last couple of years of work-related fatalities. Now, obviously, this data comes from all sectors, all sizes. In the oil and gas sector, you know, there have been spikes where the fatal accident rates have increased dramatically year on year. And as you say, in the US, you know, up almost 9% in 2021 from 2020. So the story isn't great, is it? Is that we're making a lot of effort, but actually fatal workplace incidents persist and seem to be less controllable and at risk of spiking. So really, when we think about our view as safety professionals and trying to educate and bring people on that journey with us, what do we talk about? We talk about avoiding injuries. We want to go home safe to families. Everyone, leaves work in the same condition or better than they arrived. Realistically, I guess our view is that safety is really the effective control of exposure. There's understanding these exposures and effectively controlling them for self and for others. And as HSE professionals, we have to be relentless in looking out, controlling these risks, but for all the stakeholders involved. So let's move to the traditional safety triangle as what was intended to be an aid to our prioritization and our approach. So Heinrich's triangle obviously originated, many years ago, came from the insurance sector, but effectively was meant to be a guidance to us in terms of, if you remember the traditional, there were the sort of 300 low-level events at the bottom. This translated into 30 accidents and incidents, and ultimately the top of the triangle was one fatality. So the sort of 331 on the principle of the more effort you put in, the better you'll improve the outcomes and reduce those numbers ahead. And, in certain conditions and circumstances, they were right. However, about 15, 20 years ago, DEKRA, or Behavioural Science Technology as it was then, did some work with 7 major global corporations from energy, logistics, food and mining. And they looked at over 1,000 incident cases. And what they found was different, that of those 1,028, there are a different ratio that had a serious injury and fatality potential. So this sort of helped change our view, really. So we asked 2 big questions of this data and of this triangle. So the first one we ask is, does the triangle, the traditional triangle, describe what is happening? And we all came to the conclusion, yes, we can see the flow through, that the more lower level incidents fed into, accidents and injuries that fed through to fatalities. So, yeah, the safety triangle is descriptively accurate. However, how does it perform when it comes to prediction? And this is where we found that the triangle was limited, in that actually it isn't an accurate predictor of serious and fatal injuries at all. And so that led us to look a bit deeper with math. I think it's important to start with some definitions of SIF. Not everyone refers to it as SIF. There are high potential incidents, or some people call them life-changing events. Some companies include reputational damage, for example, as something. But traditionally, when we talk about SIF definitions, we talk about life-threatening, so something that required life-preserving action, emergency first aid, that if that didn't take place would have resulted in the death of that person. We talk about life-altering, so significant loss of a body part, organ function that permanently changes a person's life, quality of life changing as well. And then obviously fatality is understood and understandable. Now, I don't know about the group, but sometimes, there can be variations of opinion as to what constitutes a life-altering. Is losing a finger life-altering? Well, personally, I'd argue yes. So some might say, well, no, you can still continue your work with reduced duties, but there you go. So it's important to get the definitions right within the audience and the stakeholders in your organisation. So in terms of defining this, it's really useful to perhaps look back to your event log, your incident register, and look at the categorization and see how accurately injuries with and serious potential events had been categorized. So, for example, laceration or crushing injuries that could have resulted in severe blood loss, injuries involving damage to the brain or spinal cord, any event that requires a defibrillator or CPR, serious burns. So again, it's important to understand, what you agree in your business constitutes one of these definitions, and I'll go into more later on. But I think we're all agreed in the group. These are events and incidents that nobody wants to happen on their watch or at all. And so, when we focus our effort, we need to look at trying to avoid these most serious and high consequence events. When we talk about SIF exposure, we kind of talk about a 5-minute rule. If you talk about whether something has SIF potential for more than 5 minutes, it probably isn't a SIF. It should be quite clear, whether this is in or out. And here's some guidance that we think will help you. We have the definitions for the SIF actual. We have the life-threatening injury or illness, we have the life-altering injury or illness, and we have fatalities. But then this is where it gets more difficult. So we have SIF potential. So could it happen here? Has it happened here before? Has it happened in our competitor? Has it happened in industry? Is there a realistic possibility that this could occur here? What happens if we repeat that exposure 100 times? Would we get a different outcome? This is luck and variations on activities. If one or two things change with that event, so you reverse that forklift, you hit the guard, and the barrier is damaged. What if it was a different time of day? What if it was a lunch break, the end of the day? What if one or two things change about that event that could have led to a SIF? Luck, how many times is luck involved? And there, by the grace of God, we managed not to have a serious event, but actually, we were extremely close. And also attitude and worker perspective, what has become normalized in their world? Are they blind to these risks? They come down steps carrying a load without holding the handrail. Is that normal for them now? Do they have the same view? And then SIF exposure. So we look at the precursor. What were the conditions before that SIF potential or actual event? And let's do a discovery into that. We have to analyze the causes of the actuals and the potentials. They're normally the same, but it's the potentials that provide the data, because usually most organizations don't have that many SIF actuals. Unless you're a large multinational with thousands of employees, SIF actuals can be counted on one or two hands, whereas SIF potentials is a significant data resource to harvest, and we encourage you to look at SIF potentials to learn. So the formula is very few actuals plus many potentials gives you your SIF exposure rate. Now, again, with a SIF precursor, our preliminary investigation showed that 81% of SIF precursor events happened in normal work, day-to-day work, the same job we do every day, whether it's driving to work, whether it's unloading a serious unloading a heavy vehicle, working at height. So these aren't sort of random events occurring. This is 80+% what we do every day at work. Plus, and this is the significant point about controlling exposure, what happened to the management controls? We know that you can fall from height. We know that confined spaces can be dangerous. What happened to the control on that incident? Was it absent? Was it ineffective? Or was it somehow not complied with? Did by the worker, a teammate, a leader, was the control measure put aside for that day? And then significantly, SIF events are very, 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 very rarely, if ever, one-offs. They're normally events that are allowed to continue, and there is a reliance on luck and a false confidence. And really, this is a question of culture and leadership. And ultimately, the bypassing of controls has been encouraged or tolerated or allowed to happen by the site, the leaders, and the way they work there. So, as I say, management may or may not be aware that the controls are not being complied with, and this gives you, fuel to dig deeper and learn. So, this is a bit of a busy slide, but it just kind of it shows you really that, as I say, a lot of SIF events and SIF potential events are around routine operations, performing routine tasks. And as you say, non-SIF potential events could be more around human factors, life-saving rules. But this is a bit complex, but what it's trying to show is that the causes and correlations of SIF and non-SIFs are very different. If we move on to our what we're calling the new paradigm of SIF prevention, the causes and correlates of SIF are very different. If you want to reduce SIFs, you have to work inside the SIF triangle. Working outside the triangle will not help you reduce these SIFs. And secondly, SIF is not a technical HSE problem. It's a leadership challenge and opportunity as well. It is vital for leaders to not only understand SIF prevention, show an interest, and be engaged in SIF prevention activities to impact the triangle, as in all other areas. What do your leaders know about SIF? Then you have to have some sort of SIF exposure metric. Like anything, you need to understand where are we now and how are we going to get better when we allocate resources. So, we calculated that the industry average amongst DEKRA's client base was around 21% SIF exposure potential. So about 1 in 5 activities had the potential to cause serious injury and harm. Now, in some sectors, oil and gas and others, it could be much higher or it could be much lower, but this is a useful benchmark to people. And of course, this is understanding these points. It all leads us back to how effective are our incident investigation and event learning activities. Yes, people might be reporting, but what's the quality of the narrative in those reports? Do they understand SIF, the people writing the incident investigations or writing the reports? So a focus on improving the quality of incident investigation report writing is going to help you with SIF prevention. And of course, not all investigations require the same level of investigation. SIF allows us to prioritize our activity in these areas. So we absolutely have to embrace and integrate SIF into accident reporting and investigation processes. Yeah, as you can see, the precursors is this sort of the black base at the bottom of the pyramid that are these high-risk situations where the management controls are absent, ineffective, not complied with, and allowed to continue. So we're going to talk about some sort of core principles working with SIF. And this is not to tell you how to do it, but just to sort of refresh and remind of what you need to pay attention to. Perhaps when you're working with your teams and your SIF prevention stakeholders, what are your weak spots? What are your development opportunities? What do you need to refresh and support them more around? So the recordable log is misleading when it comes to SIF exposure. example, with Deepwater Horizon, I think they just had the lowest recording log for years. And in fact, I speak to clients frequently whose recordable incident rates have been going down over the years, and yet then they suffer a serious or a multiple fatality event, which they've been blindsided to. We'll sort of try and work out a little bit why this happens. So if the group can help, if we look at the different, so what's in an LTI? Let's just say you've got a worker, they bend over and pick up this bottle of water to refresh the office, and they strain their back muscle, and they could be off for a couple of days. Okay, so again, that's going to go in the log, and could be reportable or should be reportable. Then you've got near miss. So you've got a worker working on top of a heavy vehicle, pulling a tarpaulin over to cover the load. Meanwhile, the truck is bumped by a nearby forklift or other vehicle, and the driver falls off, grabbing onto the cargo netting on the side of the truck, pulls themselves back on top of the truck. So let's imagine that this is in your organisation. Which of these events is recorded? Which of these events has been escalated? Which of these events do you think was the most attention was paid to by the company? And we find with clients that, particularly leaders, operational managers and leaders, is that they may very well be aware of this back strain injury. There might have been a campaign, there might have been a safety stand down, there might have been other things. But they might go, well, I never even heard about this other near miss that had the potential for a fatality. They could have been fallen off and broken their neck. They could have been hit by another vehicle. And this sort of illustrates, I hope, the challenge in businesses, in that, the things that get reported are acted upon, whereas there are other activities and events that are lurking in the dark that, again, you've been relying on luck to prevent. And again, this blind spot is created by, a focus on classification and logs. But there is a SIF blind spot in incident recording. So this was an example of, as you say, of a client of ours who was making good progress to their mind. They got their rates down. They run out various leadership programs. They enhanced their behaviour-based safety systems, and yet the blue clouds at the bottom indicate where they're having fatal events. Oh yeah, they thought, we're really getting on top of this. We've made this progress, and then four fatalities in a year. I just asked the question, look at your own data and stats, and have a think about how your senior executives are understanding the data for safety and your SIF performance. So yeah, pay attention to this blind spot. So in terms of, if we had to sort of concentrate on 4 areas to obviously enact, but keep an eye on, enhance, that will help you to eliminate serious injury fatality events, then these are our 4 pillars here at DEKRA anyway. So the first is education. You must educate senior leaders on SIF. Secondly, it's about visibility. You need to provide a visibility to SIF, not just actuals, through the use of metrics. And planning. You need to understand your SIF precursors. 81% of them arise from normal work. So it's making sure that everyone understands these critical behaviours that can lead to a SIF event. And lastly, but possibly most importantly for HSE professionals, is SIF prevention well integrated into your existing safety management systems? Are there blind spots within some of your procedures or reporting or training systems about SIF? And what can you do to fill those gaps? So, yeah, accident reporting and investigations are not as good as we'd like them to be, and not as good as you think they are. And I'm sure there are examples from the group on this. As you say, the quality of accident investigations is a real enabler or barrier to good SIF prevention. If the comments aren't there, or they're very sparse, or they don't give any detail, or they're inaccurate, it's going to make your life a lot harder. So a focus on the quality of the content within incident reporting is really helpful. So, yeah, in terms of the accident investigation processes, this is something you'll need to dig into and enhance if you want to have an effective SIF prevention regime. And really, SIF prevention really encourages and supports reporting and good quality reporting. So it's going to use it as a tool to improve the investigation and learning activities that you've got there. For example, you will have different response for a non-SIF to a SIF potential. It might be a very quick 5Y, a small discussion group around it, and then, as you say, you probably want to establish some sort of SIF stakeholder group that will perform deeper root cause investigations, support the action plan, and work with the governance team to make sure that the improvements actually do take place and are maintained. And importantly, there needs to be SIF reporting at a high level across the organisation. When leaders start their safety meetings, them being familiar with SIF metrics, and this is a really positive sign. But yeah, you need to support the group and share these SIF action plans at a high level across the organisation, particularly when you're justifying the extra resources to look at prevention activities. So, we have process here that we look at. We have two different sort of views. We have a reactive view. Does the incident have SIF potential? We look at the incident investigation, what went wrong. We look at the analysis. And then we have a proactive view where we look at high-risk situations. We've got SIF protection checklists and safety systems. And then we invest in the field verification of those controls to make sure that people are protected and not exposed. So we'll share a bit of this in the slide deck that we'll share with you. But yeah, we'd like to sort of say, which of these are you doing? Which of these are you doing well? Which of these do you think you'll get the most benefit from improving? But definitely developing a SIF dashboard is going to help you in this area. So when we talk about SIF and the hierarchy of controls, again, typically when we look at the incident investigation and the control measure, where are they putting this? If they're consistently putting all the corrective measures in the bottom end, the employee-focused ones, that's a warning sign. You've got to be considering some engineering controls or substitutions higher up the line. So there should be a mix of where on the hierarchy of controls these actions are taking place. And you definitely want at least 20-25% above in the exposure focus rather than the employee focus. Give you a bit of a benchmark and indicator that they are considering things beyond employee behaviour. Now, the role for behaviour-based safety is significant and underutilised when it comes to serious injury prevention. Our own studies found that 87% of the time, SIF precursors were discoverable via an interview or a BBS observation. This is to maybe focus on your critical behaviours inventory, your checklist of behaviours related to SIF that that may be requiring more maturity or cover more topics. And again, with BBS processes, you've got an opportunity to observe, SIF prevention in action, partnering with these frontline supervisors, engineers, safety prevention, and the lesson learned processes. So again, there's integrating SIF into BBS and leveraging BBS for SIF is really important. And again, we would say if you've got BBS, you've already educated the stakeholders. Make sure you build in SIF to these points. So in terms of the exposure categories, we just wanted to sort of highlight some typical ones. You may develop your own. Obviously, not all of those may apply here, but it's useful to have something visual to help with your stakeholder education. And we try and sort of say, run some exercise with the people to test their understanding. You as a safety professional may think this is obviously an activity with SIF potential, but others may not see that. So it's useful in your other communications to maybe provide some examples and ask them to classify and explain why they think it's not SIF or SIF for each of them. And you're just beginning this process of refining their decision logic around serious and fatal events. So fractured wrist, employee trips on a tear in the carpet, catches themselves on the fall to the ground. Would they agree that's a SIF or not? And the second one, employee falls from a 2.2-meter work platform for the ground. Now, whilst it's simple for us, again, for employees and stakeholders, they may have become blind to it because these events may have happened and they may have overlooked them and said, well, nothing went wrong today, let's not report it. Importantly, SIF events are not one-offs. The precursors have been there all along, and so our vocabulary and reaction to SIF must change. When a serious incident happens and the leader says, this is a bolt from the blue, this is a 1 in a million, we need to stand strong and challenge that. I'll just repeat again, the 4 things you must do. Educate these senior leaders on SIF. They need to understand this problem before they can act on it, and they may have an incomplete or incorrect understanding of SIF. But any solutions to SIF require their regular attention. This is not a one-off campaign. This is language they need to live and breathe, and obviously spread throughout the organisation. So senior leaders can be excellent sponsors for SIF activity. Secondly, we need to talk about providing visibility to this SIF exposure. So we make sure we've got a good agreed definition of life-threatening versus life-altering, and that will help you down the line. You can work on this through your perhaps looking backwards and categorizing what's happened in the last 100, 200, 300 events. You need to determine your SIF exposure potential and, make sure your decision tree is there, but also make sure that your judgments are being made accurately. And then, you need to calculate the SIF exposure rate, both a SIF recordable and a SIF total, and perhaps benchmark different parts of the business around this to help you with providing visibility. Again, we've got to know your SIF precursors, the 3 places where they hide in your high risk, high exposure, but routine tasks. Knowing that your management systems, where there are deficiencies, these wasn't followed or not complied with, and significantly how to continue. These are real red flags for you to have a deeper dive into SIF in your activities. And then lastly, for HSE professionals, you need to spend some significant time and effort to integrate all these SIF prevention interventions into your existing safety management systems. So this could be look at your inductions, this could be look at your contractor management processes, look at your life-saving rules, your pre-task risk assessments or job safety analysis, look into your field verification of critical control activities and your whole instant reporting and management system. So make sure that SIF is embedded and, if you like, a golden thread throughout all your strategy and activities. Now, I know we're going to move in a bit to a little bit of a poll and some perhaps discussion about how we are tackling these issues, what we're doing well, what maybe we're not doing so well. But I thought I'd put up something to help you simplify, you know, when the discussion with your leader, you know, what can I be doing about SIF, senior leader? Then, you know, this is a good little checklist of things that they can think about. So don't be blindsided by incident rates. Look into, you know, what happened, what was the personal impact of these things? How do I feel about SIF potential events here? Really helping focus on the strength of corrective actions. You know, did we close this out promptly enough? Did we close it out at the right level? Are we, you know, have we put in a weaker control than we could have? Making sure case management is vigorous behind closed doors. Making sure that the climate supports and encourages near miss reporting, because it's these near misses that are going to provide your SIF potential data. Leaders have got to become the advocates for their workers, focus on what really matters. Again, we know that there aren't infinite resources in safety, and so SIF is a way to focus on what's going to deliver the most impact or reduce the worst impacts in your business and deliver value for money versus other lighter safety activities. Leaders should be involved with SIF, never walk past. Be trained or coached to have a good quality conversation that helps on a site visit and talking about SIF with the workforce. And really importantly, zero tolerance for deviation. You know, these management tolerance of deviance, you know, they've got to be impeccable on these points and consistent. I hope that's helpful, and you know, ask your leaders to rate themselves 1 to 5 on how they're doing with these points, or how well you've been supporting them with these points. And you know, it's a topic that I know there's a lot of discussion at the moment on LinkedIn and other channels about the safety profession. You know, are we going in the right direction? Are we doing the right things? I feel that SIF is at the core of our profession. As safety professionals and responsible for educating senior executives, we cannot not know about SIF potential. You know, this is a core element to our role. SIF exposure recognition and mitigation, again, is an operational responsibility. We've got to empower the organisation to be resilient to SIFs. And again, the closer you get to SIF exposure, the more likely you are to take action on it. So having an HSE team and leaders that get out in the field, that challenge people, that talk about SIF is all going to be helpful to you. And now, I did have an activity, but actually, do we want to run the poll, do you think, Simon, before we go into Q&A?
Yeah, I think let's run the poll. Let's have a go with the poll. Let's answer a couple of questions, or let's pose a couple of questions whilst we're getting the poll up, and then we can run the poll and see the responses as people are responding to the poll. Let's do that. So so can everybody? Now I'm not quite sure of the technology here, but I think yes, you should have a question now that's appeared on your computer. Rank what you do best in your business. So educate your senior leaders, provide visibility to SIF exposure throughout your organization, know your SIF precursors, or SIF integrate interventions into management systems. So for your company, your organization, where you're working, just for this poll, do high, medium, or low on each of those 4 questions. So for me, panelists can't vote. Okay, so I'm not able to vote. But can everybody just vote, and then we'll bring up the next question. Okay, so you have another 10 seconds, and then we'll bring up the next question. Okay, very interesting. And thank you, Christian. Very, very interesting topic. Every day is a school day. Okay, so there we go. So from the poll, so what do you do best in your business? It looks as though it's a fairly even spread. High appears to be medium
senior
and
leaders,
high.
I'd say, yeah, senior leaders.
Senior leaders seem to be on side between high and medium. Not many people are not doing anything at all. It looks as though, because we're talking to senior or
Risk professionals, absolutely, yeah.
They're talking to their senior leaders. It appears that senior leaders are taking things on board, which is good. And also it provides visibility. So high and medium again for visibility. Knowing your SIF precursors, it looks as though from an organizational perspective, you are really in tune with your high SIF potentials. And then finally, integrating interventions into management systems, it appears that everybody is fairly on board with what they need to do to prevent their SIFs occurring in their organizations. Very interesting.
Which is fantastic. And as I say, it's it's not always the case, even in large high hazard businesses, that sometimes this is this is something that has fallen to the back, perhaps because of that overconfidence that the rates have been going down. So that's really encouraging to see. And I think one of the sort of tricks and tools, particularly when people are doing refresher training on safety, or in toolbox talks, is to drop in some elements that help you understand whether people still understand SIF. So there can be quizzes, there can be other things. So yeah, we'd say to people, this is a typical activity that we'd work into a work group on SIF. We give them two situations, and then we'd ask them which is a SIF potential, which isn't a SIF potential. And it can be useful for people to actually understand and check their understanding of SIF. I'm not going to ask the people in the group to do it, but it's just an illustration for getting people talking about SIFs and giving them something that helps them demonstrate in a safe space whether they really understand it or not.
Yes.
And again, SIF exposure, you decide. Forklift operator backing up at 5 miles an hour, strikes the pedestrian walkway guard or damages it, no pedestrians in the walkway, versus the incident report. So again, these are just some things that people can use in their own business, and we'll provide a copy of it. But it's when their incidents have occurred, it's really useful to use real life examples to get people thinking that happened here. We're not talking about another business, another team. This is something that is under our noses. So yeah, great. I mean, thanks so much for your time. I probably raced through it a bit. There's lots of information on serious injury fatality prevention. On IOSH webinars, on white papers from numerous sources. There's a link in the slide which we'll send, which has got some more of the DEKRA stuff. But yeah, I thought this would be the time really to perhaps have answer a few of the questions, and perhaps some sort of group discussion really, Simon, if you've got the time left to lead that.
Yes, that's very good. So there's been some very engaging questions asked by the audience here. So first question is maybe if we can answer three in the time that we've got. What do you think the best method for accident, incident, injury reporting method is? So that's the first question. For me, I would say using an internal prescribed database reporting system, because in that case, multiple people can receive the report or the notification from source in one go. If you fill a form in and that form then has to be scanned in and then emailed, it's very often that by the time that form has reached the senior management, it's somewhat diluted. Whereas if you enter the details straight into a database, various people, the department manager, the safety team, the everybody, all senior management, line management, supervisory management, and even other team members and safety champions can receive that information all in one go. And when that notification's done, you can attach photos, you can attach other documents in that notification. So that's a very good method for notifying. So use a database system that's relevant to your organization. Next question. Could the employee who trips on the tarred carpet, could that be a SIF depending on the outcome? So,
well, yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. If you're carrying a load of chemicals, or there's an environment that yeah, a fall could result in acid on your face, or fall to the side of the stairs, down a gap in the stairs, etc. So absolutely, I think it's a good question, and it gets at the heart of understanding the circumstances behind these precursors. So this is you're absolutely right. It's important that you understand what activities you've got have got SIF potential, and you make sure that in incident reporting enough relevant background, context, and detail is provided for you to learn from that event. So yeah, absolutely. Trips can be SIF potential events.
yes.
Particularly if you look at if you've got vulnerable customers or workforce, there are examples of supermarkets where a slip has resulted in a fatal injury or a damage leading to a fatality. So yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the personal circumstances of the person who's slipping. They could be under medical treatment. The floor that they fall on, certainly in a supermarket, is going to be very hard. And if you're an average height person, you're going to be falling 180, 1,800 millimeters potentially, where your head hits the ground. That's going to have a serious impact. So the next question is, how do you make this part of compliance and culture when the focus for the business is on profit and survivability? So that's a very interesting question.
It is an interesting question, and for me, people are familiar with Pareto's law 80-20, if you like, and for me, SIF activities resonate with those. Ultimately, if you have limited resources in your company for safety, limited time, limited effort from your stakeholders, are you focusing on the things most likely to lead to a catastrophic or fatal event that will potentially bury your business forever, or certainly damage your reputation forever, as well as profit and survival? Or are you focusing on lighter safety incidents that ultimately, whilst frustrating and painful don't have the same catastrophic impact. So I think, Kevin, it's a good question. If anything, I see SIF as making better use of existing safety resources. The conversation with your leaders is there's not an infinite purse for safety. Let's make sure we focus on SIF prevention activities because they are going to deliver us the best return on investment and prevent the biggest financial and other problems that we're going to have. So I think it's a question of positioning, and you do this through educating senior leaders.
Yes, yeah, I completely and absolutely agree that. Then I think we got time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. So, can SIF training be incorporated into routine job leadership and employee training modules? And that, to me, the answer is yes. You can't. You walk the walk, talk the talk. It's in everything you do. It's in management meetings. It's in training. It's in discussions. It's in toolbox talks. It's the message that you need to spread throughout the organization, because what gets measured gets managed. Good safety is good practice and good business, and it also comes back to profit and loss as well. As you've just said, poor reputational outputs that come from incidents can absolutely annihilate a business overnight. And it's very essential that we as safety professionals get involved and help educate, train, brief, and take people along on the journey that we're employed to do. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. I mean, as you say, we've spent an hour today talking through this topic, and hopefully people will feel that although the audience is safety professionals, that there are elements of this that are understandable to all employees. And as you say, this could be a kind of before and after internal discussion. You have different layers of detail depending on your audience. Is this a new employee we're inducting, or is this a leader, or is this a SIF stakeholder? So yeah, I think absolutely this should be integrated into education, and especially for refreshers. It makes a really good, rather than repeating content, it's a really good opportunity to drill down on what potentially matters most in your activities. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And if there are any more questions, obviously Simon will field those. We'll do our best to respond to them, in the sort of follow-up messaging.
Yes. So thank you. So just to summarize, down incidents have been going down, but fatalities have marginally declined. So it's very important that we as safety professionals are relentless in getting our message of safety across. Use the 4 pillars: education, visibility, planning, and integration. And remember, the triangle is still proportional, and it's still relevant, and it's not necessarily a predictor of a company's safety. We need to stay focused as health and safety professionals, and the results will pay dividends in your organizations. So thank you, everybody. There's a webinar feedback screen that should have just been displayed. I don't think, yes, we're not able to complete it as panelists, but I'd be very grateful if you could complete that little survey, and with that, I will close the session. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Really appreciate your questions and participation in today's talk.